Hi, welcome to Ruminate on This, small bits of information from AMTS, the Nutritionist Webinars. This is episode 3 in a series of 9 helping you better understand NDF. This clip discusses a consolidation of many NDF terms and lab methods into one comprehensive and approved method through the work of Dave Mertens.
And this is where some of these letters come in. Dave decided it was time that we more accurately describe the term. So instead of just having it be NDF, we now have the first step was aNDF. And that little A means that alpha amylase was added to the solution. And that's really useful in high starchy feeds because it degrades that starch and allows it to filter better. The second is the addition of sodium sulfite to the NDF solution. That gets rid of at least 50% of the nitrogen that's in the NDF matrix. It doesn't get rid of all of it, but it does get rid of at least half. The major labs in the U.S. had adopted this method a long time ago, and they still called it NDF. And the reason that they adopted the method was improved throughput, especially with things like corn silage, and it also gave them more repeatable results. So that was a great first step, but again, they still called it NDF. But there was a lot of labs, as we look globally, that were not using these methods, and they still called things NDF. So we still had all this confusion. The National Forage Testing Association in the U.S., their certification for NDF has used aNDF for years. They still called it NDF. And to get certified, to reach the level of certification, the participating labs had to use the method with sulfite and amylase. Dave continued to push this harder, and so now we're thinking of all of that as aNDF. Okay, that's aNDF by itself is on a dry matter basis. The second step with this, though, was this whole issue of soil contamination. Silica is not soluble in NDF solution. It is an ADF solution, so this was never an issue with ADF. And as we all know, between the larger equipment, dust, irrigation, especially flood irrigation, there's a lot of soil contamination that can get on these plants. So the only way to account for this is to do an ash on the aNDF residue. That removes everything but the soil. So we can do this correction to account for this ash contamination. What that does is it puts aNDF on an organic matter basis. So that's what the OM component is. This can change the result anywhere from 1 to 20 units of aNDF based on how much soil was in the sample. The result of this is it puts any of that difference into soluble fiber. So we were always, if we don't do aNDF OM, we are artificially saying that there's more NDF and less soluble fiber. And that can get pretty significant when we start looking at some of these feeds that take an alfalfa hay that can have a fair amount of soluble fiber, which ferments more with rates more like starch, versus an NDF pool that degrades much slower. So this can really change some numbers around pretty tremendous. And because remember, we calculate soluble fiber by difference. So it's total carbohydrates minus acids, minus sugar, minus starch, minus NDF. So it's basically the kitchen sink. It's everything that's carbohydrate that we don't directly measure. So this is the pool that we're manipulating by going to the OM.
That short originally aired on the September 2016 Taluki webinar. Unofficially, we called that webinar Tom Talks About Whatever He Wants. In the next short, we'll discuss why we can't just take and subtract out the ash to come up with the aNDFom results.